Alrighty, we should be kicking it live right about now. So I'm just waiting to confirm. Probably going to be a 60-second lag here. I'm looking at the video screen at the moment to see how bad the lag is. But so I'll spend 60 seconds on that. Hope you're all good. Sorry, I said I'll do this at 10:30 every Sunday, and it's 11 o'clock, but just happens that way sometimes. Bits and pieces tonight, you know. Actually, to tell the truth, it's kind of embarrassing. I've seen Jumanji in parts before, but I actually watched it from the start, and I was kind of getting into it. But I actually enjoyed it so much, I started recording the second half of it, so that I could come and do this and go back and watch that later. Hope everyone's well. That's funny. I just actually recorded a video for Busan Kevin's class about Christmas funnily in my case, I spend probably more Christmases in Australia because of my mum's family's all in Australia. So even when I was in New Zealand, which I was about half the time I was in Australia, I'd even go to Australia for the Christmases when I was living in New Zealand. The screen just popped on, so that is the lag. That is impressive. That is like over a minute. I am broadcasting in 720p, which I guess means my voice is going to be more out of sync than usual, but what can you do? You'll get a better view of my unshaven face, I guess. How's it going, everyone? In terms of news topics and whatnot. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to have them handy here just as fallbacks for conversations, although some people have already given some proposed topics. QI Ranger, Chi Ranger, suggested the Secrets Law and a comparison to the Korean law, which I did not have time to read. I've talked about that a lot lately, as I have also with Korean relations, as Michael Peckett asked for. However, with Korean relations as well, I feel like I'm touching on it a little bit too much lately, although I'm happy to go on it again. But yes, the other topic was from Jake Knowlton. He was asking about making Japanese friends, and maybe that's where I'd like to start. I don't know, I feel like that's where we can get, maybe do some news first and then do some other stuff like that a bit later on. That said, I can't really remember much about what's in the news. One thing I have done lately is, I know my Facebook has been a bit quiet. I've been very, very busy lately. And so I've done something I originally set out not to do. I wanted to control what I post on Facebook more. And I just automatically tweet articles that I favorited and liked from my reader. But you know what? I'm missing a lot of interesting conversations just because I don't have so much time lately. So I lately just configured my reader so it will also send the interesting articles to Facebook. So apologies for, I know it looks like what it is, like I'm sending the stuff that I favorited, but it's there because I think it's worth having a discussion about. So have a discussion, check those out and find out what's interesting. And that's what I'm about to use right now to see what articles I've marked as being interesting from the last few days. How's everyone's week been? It's getting close to Christmas. Which there was a blog I actually did say for later in Japanese, talking about the phenomenon of Japanese women trying to just corner men for Christmas Eve, for that big date. How it's like, if you can't get a date for Christmas Eve, you're some kind of complete loser. And so there's a lot of pressure on men and women to have dates on Christmas Eve. And I guess people are familiar with this in the West to some extent. You talk about the pressure around Valentine's Day, about having a date on Valentine's Day. And the whole pressure that goes through of the build-up and the expectation and the date, and, you know, how many couples break up after that, and the kind of gauntlet of expectations and emotions that people go through on Valentine's Day in the West. It's exactly the same in Japan, except you go through it 3 times in about 3.5 months. You go through it on December 24th, February 14th, and then again on March 14th. It's surprising. Maybe that's why the birth rate is so low. It's amazing people can stay together, having to go through 3 Valentine's Days in 3 months. There again, it's a great reason to get married, just to avoid all of that. Good to see everyone. Good crowd in tonight. I see much love being had between Find and Kureme and Jake Knowlton. I'm sure that's some sort of a greeting that I'm not supposed to get, and I probably don't want to get. Good to see you, Leonard. How's it going? Hope you do spend it with your brother this year. As I'll be spending it with my mother. I'll be spending it in Brisbane, Australia, enjoying the sunshine and the swimming pool. and the long days and the summer weather, which will be nice. That's how Christmas is supposed to be. That's a natural Christmas, summertime Christmas. Good to see Makiko is. Jake Knowlton, good to see you. Dan Cowell, good to see you. There is a 1.5 to 3 second lag between the video and the sound. So by the way, Mikey Coates was asking, this is the original questions answer, this is the bit that's going to get trimmed off. So I can say boobs and all that kind of stuff, which I wouldn't say on the video that I leave behind. I'm going to trim this off. So Makiko, you're asking, technical question, how am I doing this live? And how am I having the comments there beside the video, which everyone wants, and you can't get any more with the Hangout? I'm using software called Wirecast for YouTube. I paid money for it. About $300, but it's broadcast software, and it's pretty. You can hook it up with pretty much professional broadcast equipment. I just use my USB webcam and this mic, the same as I'd do anyway, but it just gives you a little bit more control of your presentation, make it look a bit cooler, lets you do lots of cool things. Although you have this horrible lag with the sound, there is a new version out which I can't upgrade to yet, which I think is because of localization issues. I've got to get around to seeing if they've fixed that yet, because I do want to upgrade, and hopefully that will fix this horrible audio sync problem. So thanks for pointing that out, Dan Cowell, and I apologize to everyone for that, but I am a handsome Kiwi. What can I do? Thank you, Leonard. You're a man of impeccable taste. Ahmed Zombia, good to see you, man. Hello, Algeria. How's it going? Claude Speed. Yes, I made it. Good to see you all. I know I'm reading these comments like half an hour after you wrote them, but that is just how it goes. Yes, indeed. Come to Japan, stealing jobs, women, and YouTube. That's what we do. That's Kiwis. That's what we're all about. You've got your whiskey. I've got my. I've got this. Do not recommend this. Well, I do recommend this stuff. You know what's freaky about this stuff is kind of what really got me in the beginning. This Ripobitang. This freaks even a lot of Japanese people out. I wonder if I can get that to focus. Focus, damn it. Won't focus. It's focused on my face. Well, that's natural. It would want to try to do that, but well, anyway, one of the ingredients on this, the ingredients are taurine. Everyone knows what taurine is. That wonderful, great stuff for you. The next one's inositol. I don't know what that is. It looks like inoshishi, which is like wild boar. So I'm thinking it's like wild boar toll, even though I know that that's wrong. And the next one is nicotine acid amido. And everyone reads this and says, oh my god, it has nicotine in it. And that's what I thought, because I was totally addicted to this stuff for a while. It's basically a Red Bull in a smaller bottle made to taste like cough syrup. And mixed with industrial waste. It's got a lot of caffeine. Well, not a lot. It's got 50 milligrams of caffeine and taurine and a bunch of vitamin B6. The nicotine in it is not actually nicotine. It's actually niacin. It's vitamin B2, I think. But it's actually the process used to extract it and involves nicotine acid. And back before nicotine was thought of as a bad thing in the 19th century in Japan, the word for niacin, they just translated as nicotine acid amido. So everyone nowadays who reads this thinks, oh my god, King Kosugi is selling an action sports drink with nicotine in it. Hey, Coca-Cola used to have cocaine. I wouldn't put anyone past these companies, but by reliable sources, it isn't actually nicotine. But probably that whiskey is better for you. I actually got pulled up at one of my health checkups once, telling me I had a pancreas like I drank whiskey, and we figured out that this was the cause. So I am easing back, although I did have it today. Big day today. Took the lad out running around, and I got a bit tired at one point. And you know, when you don't have kids and you feel like having a nap, you take a nap. No taking naps when you got a 4-year-old. So everything that is broadcast tonight will be secret, apparently. If you are a civil servant, you will go to jail for 10 years. If you are not a civil servant, you can go to jail for 5 years. It'll be awesome. Just going through, hope we're all... See, Sean Goss, side comments are back. That's right, they're always back when I use this awesome broadcasting Tokyo Tonight software like this. And they're not back when we use the Hangouts, even though with Victor there, they're arguably a lot more interesting, although only half as good looking. So, yes. Did I just read those comments backwards? It's another thing. I wish I could tell the sequence of the comments. I can't tell anything with these comments. Otaku Jake, yes, well, Rockstar. It's actually, so I'm using a second PC to read these comments, so I'm not taking bandwidth, and I'm using a wired connection on my actual connected broadcasting PC. But the result of that is that my computer today had like heaps of windows open, and it just took like literally 10 minutes before I could get Chrome to work that I could turn on the broadcast. So I'm at that, and I am of course a rock star. You know, that's the other reason. So yes, I'm about to kick it off. Can I ask you people a favor? You know me. You know that I don't do this, but I'm doing this lately on this show. Getting a crowd is what it's all about. If you guys would be so kind as to, you know, use the little share buttons below, like, tweet, let people know that this is on, and this is like the best show for like asking questions and getting information about Japan from a guy who is convinced that he knows everything and knows nothing at all at the same time about Japan. Tell the world, get a crowd in, make it a party. That's the way I like to do it. So, you know, I don't go, please subscribe. I don't really do that. But, you know, since this is live, it's about getting a crowd in. If you like this show, do me a favor and tweet it. Tweet it, Facebook it, do something like that. You know, let people know about it, because this is a fun thing for me. So, I guess, you know what, I'm going to get into the first topic. We've been talking too much about the secrets law and career relations, and I will get into that. But, good question by Jordan Doe. I'm going to take a note of that one, but I'm going to kick it off with a question from Jake Knowlton. Which I now have to use the correct mouse so I can actually change the header. And the question from to make boom. Oh, no, that's not it. Boom. First question from Jake Knowlton is a question, very simple question, but not easy to answer. How to make Japanese friends? But a good question, because I spent probably a lot of my time in my first few years in Japan very focused on this question. And I must admit, I was much more focused on it then than now. In my experience, always bear in mind, I think, whether you're at an eikaiwa or whether you're in a company where you're the only gaijin or one of a very small number of gaijins, I think the presumptions that I always work under, that always seem to generally hold. Of course, it doesn't apply in every case, but you know, if you really want to know the principles that work when it comes to making friends, the first thing is you have to realize Japanese. One, they're shy is the best term, and when I say shy, it's not so much even that they're necessarily shy. I know Japanese who are not shy, but it's the best way to understand. They're basically you've heard this a million times before. Japanese have very tight social groups. The friends that they form in junior high and high school, often they go through the rest of their lives, and to get into a circle of Japanese friends, even as another Japanese person, is almost impossible. And Japanese generally tend to be very guarded with other people generally, let alone foreigners. And part of that is that I think there's a presumption when they see a foreigner that the foreigner is going to go and make friends with the other foreigners and isn't really going to be interested in being friends with them. So there's always this kind of, they're kind of like a shy girl sitting in the corner of a party. You know, it can be and there's extremes to this as well. Of course, there are the Japanese who go around kind of sociopathologically, without a single real care for social convention or how they appear, who will just walk straight up to gaijin and say, hey, gaijin, you want to be my friend? And those people are actually even quite cool as well. And you can go to places like Roppongi and places like that where there are guys and girls who, you know, aren't just there to get banged. They're also there to, you know, make gaijin friends. And I've made good gaijin friends, you know, in that sort of way, just being in social places where there are foreigners, and Japanese are drawn to those sorts of places, and there are outward going people. Certainly true as well, I think, outside of Tokyo, where foreigners are a little bit more of a rarity, that people who want to speak English and want to have gaijin friends will be very forward. You'll be sitting in a cafe, you'll be walking down the street, and they'll just come up and you just let them be your friend. I mean, that's all you have to do. In Tokyo, however, you will not stand out as a foreigner. People will not often approach you just because you're a foreigner. And certainly in my experience working in a workplace, I think in a workplace trying to make friends that way, it's pretty hard. One thing as well, Japanese often don't make a lot of friends, well, maybe this is going a little bit too far, but friends, there'll be cliques at work, and sometimes those are cliques of friends which will meet outside of work, but generally speaking, people kind of keep their private lives to themselves. And there's always this presumption, if you're the foreigner, you wouldn't be interested in hanging out with Japanese people. So I find, personally, it always helps in my case. And also, I can do it. I can speak Japanese, and I can do that. So, and even if you speak Japanese, there's still the presumption that you'll want to hang out with other foreigners. So I always try to dispel that by consciously being self-aware of the interactions I'm having with the other foreigners there, and being conscious of being proactively trying more to interact with Japanese people. I will hang out with the foreigners, and in fact I might hang out with them outside or have some good conversations with them. But if you go and sit beside them and you have lunch with them every day, Japanese are that's just gonna create a wall, which becomes mutual very quickly. At the same time, of course, if you're new in Japan and you don't have a social network, a support network, those foreign friends can be very, very important. It can be, you want friends that you can relate to. So at the same time, shutting yourself off from foreigners can create some other big problems for you. But I was very conscious about, and in fact, to the point of being dickish, as I often say, about pushing away foreigners. But part of that was really in order to show I was available, in a way, to Japanese, that I was open to Japanese. And I was the annoying, I did the reverse of the annoying Eigo bandit. I was a Nihongo bandit, not really a Nihongo bandit. I could speak Japanese already. But I was pretty forward about, if I made Japanese friends, especially in normal places like the gym or, through any kind of social interaction through mutual friends, I was pretty proactive about following up, calling them up and trying to go out with, basically to make friends myself. And through hobbies, through clubs is a great way. If you want to meet people outside of work, and I really do suggest meeting, work is the logical first place to start. But again, Japanese tend to have a very big divided line between their personal lives and their work lives, and when those lines get mixed, they cross over in sometimes in not the best ways. So yeah, I found it, over time I found it really good to make friends outside of work deliberately. Friends of co-workers, friends of my co-hires was one good way of doing that. And just hobbies. I went to the gym, I took up surfing, I joined Toastmasters. Just meeting people through common interests. You can find any interest group or hobby that you can imagine in Japan. Having people of common interests like that, I went out clubbing all the time and making friends in music stores, and DJ stores and stuff like that. Anything like that, it's just, you have to, but the point is, one, you have to be a little bit proactive. Two, you have to be very self-aware of how you appear. You don't want to startle them. You want to make yourself appear approachable by one, showing that you speak Japanese, and two, not being seen as immediately going into a gaijin clique that they're going to assume that they're going to be closed out of. As childish as that may seem, that's just how it works, mostly in my experience. So, yes, I find those are the kind of principles that have helped me to make Japanese friends. What I'd also say as well, though, is probably certainly in the second half of my time in Japan, the last 7 years, I'm guilty. Since going into foreign companies, I always function well in international companies here as someone who can bridge between the foreign and the gaijin worlds and those cultural gaps. But at the same time, and partly since I got married as well, I just don't have as much social time as it is. And, what little I do is probably spent more with foreigners now, whereas it was very much spent entirely with Japanese for my first 6 or 7 years. That just is what it is. I don't have a lot of free time. This is my free time. So, but it is like all things. It's entirely up to you how and that's the great thing about coming to Japan. You're here more or less with a blank slate, and how things develop is entirely up to you. You figure out strategies and game plans, and that's the game plan that I figured out. But, it's different for everybody. And I hope this advice is helpful. But, different strokes for different folks. Different place, different people. Whoever's around you is going to always be a bit different. I'm going to come back. My comments aren't updating. It's really annoying, but I'm going to come back to a comment that may have been a long time ago, because I can't tell when these comments were posted. But one from Jordan Do asking about making mistakes in Japanese. Mistakes in Japanese. Bada bing. Making mistakes in Japanese. do I find myself making mistakes in Japanese, and do I make a note to myself not to do it again? Another one, different strokes for different folks. Good people, people who study, people who are diligent, particularly if you're at university. I know a lot of people who walk around with notepads, little notebooks, and when they make mistakes or when they learn something interesting, they write it down. One thing, when it comes to language, flashcards are good. Recognition flashcards are good, and I think that the smartphone invention is great for that. Don't be over-dependent on your smartphone. Old-fashioned pen and paper is the best thing for proactively plugging into your memory. Writing something down physically is much more memorable. You have muscle memory. You have much more going on than you do if you're just typing something in. I think keeping notes is an incredibly effective way of learning anything. It's something I did not do, but I know many people who do, and it's very effective for them. And I know that the technique works for other things that I've done, for example, with my work, or certain times I've been studying or whatever. So I think that's something I'd recommend, even though it's not something that I did. It's something I know for a fact probably I would have gotten level 1 Japanese. I would have gotten everywhere where I've gotten, probably much faster if I'd done that. I'm the type of person who makes mistakes a lot. In fact, this is another philosophy I have on life in a way, and I realize it's got some serious flaws in it. I think making mistakes and bad mistakes and repeated mistakes is actually a good thing. I always felt like I did well in school growing up. I was never the top kid in class, but I was always kind of like in that top. I was always one of the people aspiring to that. I always went through these cycles. I did well not because I was smart. Quite the opposite. I did well because if there was a mistake that could be made on any exercise that was given, or if there was any aspect of it that might not be understood, I would find intuitively hit up against that. So what it meant was that the teacher would be coming up over to my desk and explaining things to me, and I'd be like, I don't get it. Explain it to me. And it's because I didn't have the confidence that I understood things, and that I got the teacher to give me the bonus explanation that meant in the end I got it better. And I'd always go through these waves with my exam scores. I remember when I was lacking in confidence, when I really thought I was really going to come bottom of the class, I'd always pull it up and get a good score. And then the next term I think, yeah, I'm good at this. I got a good score last time. And it's when I got confident it would just fall away. And it's good to have kind of a predisposition to being not confident, which I must admit I have lost somewhat with Japanese, and as a result of that I do make mistakes now, actually. I mean, the same sort of ones, but I probably don't learn from them as quickly as I should. I mainly have them repeated. My wife is telling me them more now that we have a son. Obviously she doesn't. I think this is kind of an annoying thing. A lot of foreigners talk about how they make mistakes and no one tells them because they get it, but they don't correct them. And it's like, we want to be corrected. But now that my son is correcting some of my, and it's not really, I don't get words wrong so much anymore, but I do, sometimes I'll get some small things about grammar, like, cleaning up the room. I'll say, hey, katazuketa, or katazuita, and my wife will correct me, katazuketa, and there's one, for example, just intonation on words. My wife would correct me today. It was like, I said kabocha with the wrong intonation. And my wife is conscious about my son picking it up wrong, so she'll correct me. So I'm like, why didn't you ever tell me that before? But that happens. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely do make mistakes, and they get repeated, and sometimes I notice I'm being told I'm making the same mistake that I got told off for last week. It doesn't happen so much anymore. I think the notebook idea is really good. I mean, of course, you always look like a geek carrying around a notebook and pens in your pocket, but those people are geeks for a reason, that stuff works. If any more questions, if not, I'm going to, I think I have to refresh the comments because I don't see them updating, and I bet there's going to be a ton of new comments now, or maybe there's not. That would be even more scary. And if they're not, I'm going to talk about the secret stuff next, but let's see. Glad to see you. I am live. Jake's about to have his first Christmas in Japan. Congratulations. And without family. No, that's the first. Actually, you know what? That's a really good topic. I'm gonna That's a great topic. Coping with Christmas in Japan as a gaijin. I'm in on that one. Okay. Yeah, some questions about the making friends one, which I'm glad to see. So Jake's about to go, but it's actually Jake's question, which I think was kind of good, which is how to survive. Let's save some space as a gaijin. So how to survive Christmas as a gaijin? This is a really good one. Christmas, I think, and gaijin by the global definition, as a non-local person, as a migrant, as a traveler. When you are, as I am, from a country where Christmas is a family gathering, get together kind of a thing, and to spend Christmas alone, and let's face it, I mean, Christmas really isn't. It's become as much a secular vacation as it is a religious vacation. It's a Thanksgiving, pretty much throughout Commonwealth countries, as I've experienced it. And so in that sense, yeah, to be in a culture where not only Christmas is not celebrated the same way, but it's also not celebrated on the same day. You actually have to work on Christmas Day. I'd say there are very few times in Japan that I've always taken a very macho kind of attitude to kind of go hard or go home attitude to hardship in Japan, but I'd say the punches probably hit hardest around Christmas and during house moving. Those are the two times. And I do make a point of trying to spend Christmas with family now. I've given up many Christmases for work demands. The real challenge is, especially if you're working in a Japanese company, not only is there absolutely no comprehension or understanding of what you mean by Christmas. I mean, everyone thinks that Christmas is having a hot date and listening to George Michael, pretty much. That's all that Christmas is, and it's over on the end of Christmas Eve. And the thing is as well, most companies, although they have fiscal years that go into the end of March, you have the calendar year is a big closing. It's wrapping up business by the end of December before the Shogatsu vacation, just because there's a 2-week vacation for the end of the new year. Everyone is like the busiest and they're crushing to get through their work up until about December 27, 28, when work finishes before the end of year break. And so it's like, that's like the worst. Christmas is the worst time to try to get a vacation. It's when people are busiest and there's no forgiveness for going home early or for slacking off or trying to get vacation time during that time. And in my experience, it works a little bit better in a company where there are a large proportion of foreigners. And whether or not it's understood, it's accepted that the foreigners are going to disappear in early December. But when you're in very much a minority within a Japanese company, there's no understanding or forgiveness on that. And the fact that they're doing it all wrong, it's all about date. It's just Valentine's Day again, and it's about eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. And there are these amazing lines for Kentucky Fried Chicken. No, it just kind of feels like you're on an alien planet. It's a time almost designed to make you feel lonely. And on top of that loneliness, there's no comprehension or understanding or sympathy. And everyone's kind of having this alien, strange festivity at the same time. So yeah, it definitely hits hard, I would say, I guess. So how do you cope with that? I'd still say if there's one time in the year you can get out of Japan, I really suggest doing everything you can to try to get those vacation days for Christmas. That said as well, what I have done, this year I'm going to be in Japan working on Christmas Day. I'm going to be taking the Japan break and I'll be leaving on the 27th. I think in this respect, it helps to not be too religious. I've come to accept the birth of the emperor, the birth of the emperor of Japan as an adequate substitute for the birth of Jesus. Probably if I was more religious, I would still have trouble with that. But in practical matters, December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, you get a day off work anyway. You can make all of your early phone calls then and arrange for your air tickets. Forget about it. Work on Christmas. Everyone around the world that you contact on that day is going to feel very sorry for you. I mean, everyone loves tweeting, "Oh, it's Christmas and I'm working." You'll get all that sympathy. And go and take your vacation. I mean, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a Christmas day my son's going to get some presents on before he goes off to daycare and before I go to work on the 25th this year. And then we're going to fly to Australia, and then we're going to do a real Christmas, and it's just going to be a couple of days late, probably a few days late. I don't know, well, maybe the 28th or the 29th, but we're just going to do Christmas dinner all over again, just like it was the 25th. Who cares? Who cares? Just because, you know, the Catholic Church decided in the Dark Ages that the 25th was going to be the official date that Jesus was born, and that, you know, everyone has to celebrate Christmas then and no other time. For me, to be perfectly honest, Christmas is more about the family get together and the things that you do at Christmas, the celebration of the things. And, you know, I've done that in January, I've done that in February, actually. You got to break off those attachments to the dates because they're just not compatible with Japan. That's the main coping mechanism I've had. I'm looking forward to having a small Christmas in Japan and a proper Christmas in Australia. And the best thing is that when I have Christmas, it's going to be like when all the Boxing Day, when all the post-Christmas sales are on as well. And the shops will be open. It won't be... It can actually be better to do Christmas slightly off. So, you know, so long as you're not... It is a big deal, you know, you're going to be a whole family wanting to call you on Christmas and you're going to be at work and, you know, the time zones are off and all that sort of stuff. And it's not you know, and no one will let you go home early and stuff like that. But so long as you can get it straight with your family... In the first couple of years, this is kind of hard to do, but certainly for longer term, into the fourth or the fifth year, and people come to accept that you're living in Japan, I think you just shift it. Do it during the Japanese dates. I mean, you know, a little bit of Tenno Tanjobi and a little bit of the Emperor's birthday, and then use the New Year's break, which is practically the Japanese Christmas anyway, that family gets together for that. And they eat much crappier food. I mean, again, you can spend Christmas, you can spend the New Year's in Japan, as I have also done many times with Japanese families. Generally speaking, the osechi food that they have is really not very good. Even Japanese, to find Japanese who will say openly that they really like osechi ryori. Whereas, you know, you go to Australia, I'm sure to America or Canada or whatever as well. You have the best food of the entire year, you know, with family on that date and presents. In Japan... You know, ozoni's not bad. I can handle the mochi and stuff like that. But really, it's kind of like having Christmas cake and nothing else. The osechi ryori. You know, and then you wake up in the freezing cold and you go to a shrine to pour cold water on your hands and clap. I appreciated the cultural depth and nuance of the Shogatsu and Hatsumode when I was first in Japan in my first few years. But really, now I'm quite happy to go to Australia and hang out by the beach and eat roast turkey. You know, I don't feel too hung up on missing New Year's in Japan. That's just me personally. That's how I... Yeah, Alex has a really good coping strategy as well. Lots of mindless sex. Well, and, you know, this is the thing. Having Christmas as the third Valentine's enables that. Although it also, of course, engineers a lot of breakups around that time as well, which is also kind of confusing. Dan Cowell, are you in Gold Coast? I'm definitely going to get down to Gold Coast. Yeah, my son's big enough now. I'm going to take him down to Coolangatta if I can. I want to go, even if I can't surf this time, I just want to go and watch snappers for about like an hour. It's my favorite surf point in the world. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. Maybe even Byron, but we'll see how he goes in the car. But yeah, you know, I mean, get out for Christmas. Get out and don't be too tied to the dates because they're hard. They're not compatible. They're really, really incompatible with Japanese companies, and they will. I have had harsh experience of people not understanding or comprehending, from girlfriends in New Zealand who thought it was a date night and got really upset. I split it as a gathering, to being in Japan and being told off for going home to make Christmas phone calls. You know, I just give up on all that stuff. But yes, Christmas is a rough time. So lots of people asking about the secrets law, so I'm going to touch on it a little bit on a slightly different angle. It is now the secrets law. Bada bing. It is now the secrets law. It was passed into law this week. It was interesting watching the TV. I mean, it was, of course, railroaded through Parliament on a rush schedule, and it was really only half drafted. A lot of it's vague. What's a secret? Is there any objective review of what a secret is? Is there an appeal process for things which are improperly classified as secret? The penalties seem totally random. 10-year imprisonment for bureaucrat, 5 years for regular folk. as the leader of the Democrats, the biggest opposition party, surprisingly eloquently said, the Democrats are really just kind of finished, but he actually said, it's a law which allows bureaucrats to designate what secrets are for the benefit of protecting bureaucrats. And a lot of people quite rightly point out it's a law which there doesn't seem to be any safeguard against abuse of use of the definition of secrecy to protect politicians and bureaucrats from embarrassment. And of course, top of that list is information about Fukushima that anyone can think of, that you could threaten and intimidate journalists with imprisonment to stop that. That said, that debate and that whole thing's been going on for a long time before the law was passed. The law was passed, however, and there was no way to stop it. I mean, the LDP has a crushing majority in both houses, a crushing majority which was given to them by the Japanese people. Granted, they didn't actually campaign talking about the secrets law, but that's how politics is in Japan. They don't have to have a lot of policies. The LDP ran on like 3 policies, and they didn't have a manifesto. The Democrats had a manifesto of like 20 policies, which they managed to break every single one in 3 one-year prime minister terms, which all contradicted each other. So, they had the mandate. Well, I don't know if they necessarily had the mandate, but they certainly had the authority and the ability to do whatever the hell they wanted, and they did with this law. Very interesting that Ishiba, much like with the nuclear protests, there was a very large protest movement against the secrets law by probably very similar people, by students and aged old left-wing radicals, and but also a lot of concerned housewives and elderly people who were all marching all around the government district, and particularly around the parliament, making a lot of noise and trying to make a lot of disruption just to show, and up to about 10,000 people, making a lot of disruption to show that this is a law which needs more public consultation. The LDP argued that the law was given a public consultation, and there's been a lot of explanation to the public about it. Interesting thing, there was a public consultation. 77% of the feedback on the law was negative. But it was just, and the critics said, so they just pretty much held the public consultation as a going through the motions. They let everybody talk and ignored the outcome and passed the law anyway in just 6 days of deliberation. And the opposition parties tried to posture themselves around it. Some of them wanted to use it as an opportunity to who are outside of government but are friendly with the government, like the Japan Restoration Party. They were posturing that they had a proposed amendment bill which they wanted to have reflected, just to show that they could point to something that, look, we changed that law. And then the Democrats came up with their own proposed counter draft, which the LDP switched on the Restoration Party, which really pissed them off and said, we'll take the Democrats' bill. But when it passed the upper house, the increasing kind of protests and public voices against it meant that even the opposition parties, which were kind of dancing back and forth, the Minamoto Japan Restoration Party Democrats were dancing back and forth about supporting, and then realizing it might not be popular to support and stepping back from the law. They supported it in the upper house. By the time it came to the lower house, all the opposition parties, who had no real power anyway, were back against it and kind of switching their own position. What I found really, really interesting, the law got passed. It was always going to happen. There's nothing that can be done about it. Everyone's panicking that this might be the start of a fascist Japan, or persecution of journalists. It could be a tool that could be used for censorship and persecution of journalists and freedom of speech, which indeed it could be. But again, I always come back to the thing people have been talking about since like Nakasone, since Koizumi, since every major leader post-war Japan has been the bringer of impending militarism and fascism back to Japan. And Abe is the latest one, but it's not new to suggest that the LDP is going to take Japan back to being fascist, and it's never quite happened yet, which doesn't mean that it won't happen. But I think it shows an ignorance, that kind of knee-jerk reaction that Japan's becoming fascist, I think also shows a lack of understanding about what Japan is, and really what even if these people like Ishihara, who really probably genuinely want to do that, it shows the social limitations on those people. People elected Ishihara because he was good at bashing skulls of administrators to get, good local government done, because he is a fascist. But but they also knew it was safe to elect him because there's no way he could actually make Tokyo fascist. That's kind of how it works with the government. But there again, this is a pretty big stick for doing that. You think, of course, someone like Snowden, just purely for what he did, could go to jail automatically for 10 years based on this law. Maybe longer, who knows? And that's the whole point. The whole point is that this is a law so that, America can feel safe sharing secrets with Japan, knowing that if Japan is the weak point that leaks those secrets, that Japan has a big stick for punishing people in Japan, and there's no loopholes in Japan that make Japan a risk for holding secret information. That said, do we really want to be jumping on the bandwagon of persecuting people, whistleblowers like Snowden? I mean, that's another part of the debate. But what I found very interesting about it this week was, so of course it got railroaded through Parliament. The opposition did everything they could to stop, even though they have no numbers to oppose it. So, they made a lot of shouting, and they were throwing shoes in Parliament, and they hit the speaker, and this and that, and, they basically, and as kind of strategies to delay the vote, the opposition filed 2 or 3 non-confidence motions, one on the entire Abe cabinet, one on the Speaker of the committee that was reviewing the secrets law, and one on the sponsor of the minister sponsoring the secrets law. I think it was the minister who was sponsoring the law, a female who, frankly, a female minister, one of the few in the whole LDP party. She was, and I think it's a fair thing. The motion was on the basis that her question and answer sessions in Parliament about the law, she had no good answers for any of the questions and left a lot of vagueness, and she didn't perform her role. And then there was a thing about the head of the committee on the secrets law saying that, he ignored protest, and he facilitated the LDP just ram-raiding this law through, a bit like the Patriot Act was. And I must say, although of course these things were set up to be defeated, they were just stalling tactics. I kind of thought, well, yeah, I mean, that's basically what they did. She didn't answer the questions well. The committee was a sham, and it was set up just to ram the law through. What was interesting was that minister got up in Parliament. I saw a thing the other day on Itai News saying, that minister she really gave it to the to the opposition in a speech against them. And I'm like, well, I don't really, is there a speech by anyone in the LDP I could find persuasive? This is just the right-wing freaks again, saying, kind of being detached. And so I actually watched the video of the speech where she kind of responded to the no confidence motion against the speaker. And what I found really interesting is one thing I find really frustrating about Japanese politics is that, New Zealand politics is nowhere near as brutal as Australian politics. Where in Australian politics, that they don't even dance around being about topics. It's just straight personal insults and personal attacks. And the dirtiest sort of personal attacks you can think of. I mean, it's pretty much as close to punching in the face as you can get without punching in the face with Australian politics. Japanese politics is like, there's so many ways that you could rip on the LDP, or, that the parties could attack each other and the people in them. And for whatever reason, whatever that their banking favors, or they're thinking that they still need to keep like a gentleman's club rules, they never really get stuck in and really attack each other. But this minister came in and she started ripping into the Democrats, who were, of course, thrown out of government in 2 elections recently. And she really ripped them a completely new orifice. And I must admit, while I don't like her or her politics or her party, and while I agreed with the no confidence motions, I have to admit I was agreeing with the Nichaners, that she was talking about how, for the Democrats to be talking anything about understanding the pulse of the nation. And, and she's saying that we're doing this because we have the mandate to do this, which we have because everyone is so completely disillusioned by the disgrace that the LDP, that the Democrats were, and that they got thrown out, and that they've got no moral standing to say anything. And it's just like 2 or 3 minutes. I've never heard a speech like it before in Japanese, just completely, humiliating them. And, I must admit, I was kind of, I was agreeing with the commenters. I was like, go for it. Which isn't to say the law is a good thing or anything like that, but I thought it was interesting. Be all things as they may, the law is now law, and I guess now it'll be a matter of not if, but when we'll find out how it is implemented. But yes, it's going to be interesting. It's a law certainly which is ripe for abuse. And I saw that Chi Ranger was suggesting comparing it with the Korean secrets law. I get a feeling, well, it remains to be seen. There's no law in Japan. There's no precedent of a law like that. Korea does, of course. I mean, Korea as a country is still technically at war, and and when Korea has some spy scandals, they have real spy scandals. They have like members of parliament and government actually on North Korean payrolls, and on plans for coups supporting an invasion from the north. And they had this a year ago. They have a spy agency, which Japan is talking about forming a spy agency. They've had a spy agency the whole time, and members of their spy agency were proactively spying on and undermining left-wing presidential candidates and proactively supporting the right-wing candidates. It's basically like the entire. It is exactly like the NSA and the CIA using its resources, brazenly to support the Republicans and to attack the Democrats. That has happened in Korea. So they are a lot further along the road of badly implemented secrecy laws. And I would certainly hope, I think Japan is certainly nowhere near as militarized or nationalist or is politically polarized as Korea is. It's not at war. It doesn't have half the problems that Korea has. And I'd like to think, because of those different circumstances, Japan is a long way off having similar problems to what Korea has in the same area of laws. But there again, Korea is a case study of, what is in the law that would stop that sort of thing happening here? Nothing. Nobody knows what the law is going to be used for. And that's what freaks a lot of people out. Freaks out journalists in particular. And it's been very interesting that the Kisha Club, the press clubs, which are usually very cooperative with Japanese policy and Japanese government, are very openly opposing it right now. Because they understand, what a big baseball bat this is and how it can be used against them. So that is that on the secrets law. The other question, I think somebody was asking about Korea relations, or specifically about the Zaitokai, which I've talked about before. The attacks on Koreans in Japan, particularly in Korean neighborhoods and Okubo. I was thinking, I have talked about that before, and it's not a topic I want to dwell on too much every week. Kind of interested. You got some more topics for me? I am. It is coming up on the hour, and I'm going to wrap it up soon. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw it open to the audience. Take some questions. I might just trim the video now. So come back. I'm going to try to get back on 10:30 every Sunday. It might be 11. 11 is probably a more comfortable time, actually. I do enjoy this, and I enjoy the questions. I'm just going to take straight questions now and sign off in terms of the recorded video. Mental note. Oh, it's about midnight. I'm going to hang around for about 10 more minutes. So shoot, you got any more questions for me or any more topics for me? Give them now. I was thinking, so what have I got for saved news? Just refreshing the comments as well. I realize it is going to take about 60 seconds for that to get refreshed. I've got articles about Cool Japan, how to talk to women in Japan, here's an interesting one, the worst 10 types of companies to work at. Is this a Japanese survey? This is from Itai News, and this is from an American site. Okay, so this is American. So, nonetheless, there are 2-chain comments about this. I really recommend, by the way, I do love Itai News, and if you can't read Japanese, if you can read Japanese, even if you can only read it like averagely well, go to Itai News. If you can't read about it, go to Japan Crush, which is a site dedicated to finding the best articles from Nichian and the comments on them and translating them, so you can read them in English, because they are fun and they give an idea of probably the 30-year-old single male computer geek demographic, which is a very large demographic in Japan, and they're kind of it shows a lot about Japanese character and personality that you might not get. They do have a sense of humor. They can be cynical. And interesting. So okay, now I've just realized I might not be able to read some of these. Let's go. Number 10 is a Gaika Jutsu. So it's basically an external surgeon. These are for the worst jobs, the dirtiest and most dangerous jobs. So first is a Gaika, so an external. So basically, I see. So a surgeon who deals with external injuries and diseases. Next one is a boiler operator or fixed facility operator. So again, just dangerous. Next one is cleaning, industrial waste water operator, and so on. Well, I can sort of see that. Number 5, I was just skipping from 10, 9, 8, and then it skips to 5. I think the next one's paramedic, which is interesting. I didn't think that would be a dangerous one. The next one is an anaesthetist. The number 3 is a flight attendant. I guess they're exposed to a lot of radiation. I mean, this is a thing. Not a lot of people realize you're exposing yourself to more radiation flying out of Japan to Hong Kong, escaping Fukushima, than you would have been exposed to just staying in a place like Tokyo. This is a dentist. I never would have guessed that. And the top one is a something researcher, as a genetic researcher. Really? Again, they all seem to relate to exposure to waste products and diseases and illness. So I guess if you're dealing with blood and guts and pus and all that sort of stuff all the time, maybe that's it. Q&As. Has anyone really been in Japan? Has anyone in Japan really been far, even as decided to want to go do more like? Maybe I'm getting tired, but I'm sorry. Okay, I don't understand that. I'm going to move on. Claude is asking about South Korea's extended air defense zone. It's interesting. Well, the existing air defense zones, is particularly the line between Japan and Korea, was of course set out by the Americans during the period that Japan was occupied by America, and really de facto, long beyond Korea's independence. But it didn't cover some areas of extended territorial claims by Korea, and Korea likes making extended territorial claims. Although it's interesting, obviously Dokdo Takeshima is within the Korean air defense zone, it appears. But there are some submerged rocks which they have a dispute with China over sovereignty of, or that China thinks isn't valid as an island, that they've extended it over. So yeah, it's kind of an FU to China, although it looks like they claim more overlap with Japan's zone, and that will be kind of interesting as well. I guess with the Americans there, they're never really going to get into a direct conflict over the empty bit of water that they overlap with Japan, but that was interesting. I don't know how helpful it all is. Mattman125, will I ever let my hair grow out? I did it a couple of times as I was getting thin, but it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good growing it out. I did actually use Rogaine for a time as well, and it worked. But then I stopped using it, and it went back again to this. So actually, this is pretty cool. It's really easy to look after. I think it looks good. I just have to remember to keep it short. It's growing out a little bit right now, but I'm not going to grow it out again unless there's some miracle cure, which I'm not in a particular rush to get, that would make it go back to the way it used to be. But I don't know. It's actually good having. I'm quite comfortable with how my hair is. Michael Peckett talking about case in point, how with the piracy laws, Japan getting bullied now into downloading laws and intellectual property laws through the TPP, all sorts of legislation that it doesn't want to pass necessarily. But it can. The secrets law is very much like that, and more to the point, I think it underpins the democratic deficit in Japan. Laws, policies are not really debated in elections in Japan. It really is about like football teams. And so, if you're an American, you want to persuade Japan to adopt a certain law, even a controversial law, it's just a matter of persuading the right bureaucrats who will draft the legislation and give it to the government people, and they'll, and especially right now when the government has such an overwhelming majority, they will go along with it. So it's, and regardless, it can be 80% opposed by the public, but there's very little that anyone can do to stop these kind of laws going through. The anti-downloading laws and the intellectual property laws that America was trying to spread to Europe, very discreetly got shut down by public protest over there. There was public protest in Japan, but nothing sufficient to shut it down. So certainly, as you can say, just write it badly and allow anyone to ask anything and nobody's going to notice. Obviously, the secrets law was more noticed than a lot of other bad legislation which goes through here. That said, a lot of good legislation goes through here as well. And perhaps, there's good and there's bad to this. The bad is that obviously it makes the legislative system open to manipulation and to influence, as it does happen from America and so on. But at the same time, it also means that because lawmaking is done in the bureaucracy and not in the parliament, all this pork barreling and all of these laws which get mutated for pork barreling purposes. This does happen in Japan. Pork barreling is a huge part of Japanese politics. All of the relief aid from the tsunami, half of it went nowhere near relief. It just went into local electorates and prefectures to buy votes for the LDP ministers and the Democrat ministers when they were in power. But generally speaking, something like an energy law being, including like farm subsidies and stuff like that, like what happened with the energy law in the US. This whole kind of twisting and corruption of the fundamental, trying to make every law a new opportunity to pork barrel, that doesn't happen so much. Generally speaking, laws get made by lawmaking professionals for lawmaking professional purposes based on good research. But certainly the system is there and it's open to abuse, as I would agree is clearly happening with this law. I said I'd talk about Korea, but I'm not going to talk about Korea that much. It's nice to see that Biden came through and basically, and frankly, slapped Korea to remind them to try that, America expects them to try to get along with Japan. I think there's really, I understand that the Zaitokai and a lot of the anti-Korean protests are getting a lot of attention in Korea, and there's a feeling that and Abe's views on history are things that give a sense in the media in Korea that Japan is lurching to the right and Japan is becoming dangerous. But that's not the case, and that's silly. And the people, regardless of whether the media and the people think that way and politicians think they need to react to that, the people who run Korea are smart enough to know better than that, and they have enough influence that they can correctly influence that. And, the thing is, Japan is an old political piñata in Korea. It's if anything's going wrong, just raise the Japan piñata and start bashing it. And no one more than the daughter of a military dictator who was a high-ranking officer in the Japanese imperial military, educated at Tokyo University, and who was family friends with Abe's father. What's his name? Yasuda or something like that. His father had a different surname for some reason, but he was family friends. Abe was family friends with Park when they were kids, because their fathers were both pro-imperial Japanese imperial fascist dictators. So she wants to distance herself from that by showing how anti-Japanese she is, and power to her. But it doesn't do anyone any good. It's just simple. It's just really low-level politics, if you ask me. And good on Biden for coming in and telling them to play nice, and telling Korea to pull their heads in a little bit as well. And at the end of the day, from Japan's perspective, I guess, the stuff that's been happening in Okubo is really nasty, and there should be a hate speech law and it should be stopped. But in the whole scheme of things, it's a very, very small thing. And, most of the shenanigans and the attention grabbing on the Korean side, and if you ask my opinion about the unresolved war issues as well, I think it has a lot more to do with internal unresolved history and issues around the war than it does Japan. I think Japan has made sincere efforts to try to set things straight with Korea. Most of these things should have been put aside after they formed diplomatic relations. Victor, I owe you an email. Yes, I do owe you an email. Thanks for trolling me. I'll email you after this. I know I've just had a quiet weekend. I haven't gone near this. But, I think Korea, whether or not they're accepted as sufficient or sincere by the Korean side, Japan's made efforts. And, it's, I just think that pretending all of that's gone is just, it's in no one's interest. That said, sure, pay off the old ladies and all that sort of stuff, if you ask me, but that's been done, and Japan doesn't get credit for that. So why should they do anything more? It's the same as with China. Why be nice to them when nothing's going to pay off? So yeah, Victor, this is the new software. I'm actually about to wrap up, but I'll hang around for a couple more minutes. How's it going? So yeah, this is my Sunday slot where I just talk about random stuff. And by the way, I just haven't read. I haven't read your mail yet. I know what's in it, but I just haven't had time to sit down this weekend until now. But I'm going to do it now. I am going to wrap up soon. If there's nothing else, one last chance for questions. I see Tron Ing is saying, do school hours work in Japan? And you saw lots of students at Disneyland and temples and so on. Don't they have classes to attend? Aren't they supposed to be in school? I don't know. There are lots of organised school trips to places like Disneyland and temples. Kids take time off. Japan has the most public holidays of any place in the world. So I guess there's lots of ways. I mean, everyone knows that kids in Japan, first they do school all day, then they do clubs for a few hours, and then they go to cram school, and then they go home and they sleep for 3 or 4 hours, so who knows? I think kids in Japan spend plenty enough time, personally, from what I see, but I don't know that much about it. Leonard Brum asking, planning leaving Sweden as soon as you have your bachelor's degree. So what kind of jobs do people who aren't English natives get? I get asked this question a lot. If you're Swedish, honestly, you probably deserve an English teaching job more than an English person. But that said, there are lots of jobs in international companies. There are lots of jobs in specialist positions, although it always helps to speak Japanese as well, of course. But, if you're a good programmer or an engineer, or, there's lots of jobs that foreigners can get into here. Always suggest it's better to get the job overseas that sends you here than to get the job here. The conditions will be much better. But it's just having that valid skill, just coming here with a basket weaving degree, which I have an arts degree. But just coming here, and that is enough to get a job teaching in a school. I don't know how it works for Swedes with that, but there are ways of getting jobs. But, at the end of the day, I suggest having a skill that you would use in Sweden anyway, and then trying to use that skill in Japan. And that way, that works both ways. It means when you decide you're done with Japan and you go back to Sweden, you can say, I've been doing this job for a few years. It's not, I spent a few years, doing random jobs. JPS asking, so how does the new secrets law affect J-vloggers like us, like myself? Well, no one knows. No one knows how the law is going to work. But I guess, technically what it means is that if I were to leak a secret, a designated secret, it has to be a defined secret. I don't know if it's strict liability or not. I don't know if it applies even if I don't know that it's a secret. But certainly, technically, if I were to reveal a secret on a vlog in Japan, I could be subject to up to 5 years imprisonment. 10 years if I work for the government, but I don't work for the government, at least not now. So, could happen. Thank you for the compliments on the hair. I know I was getting trolled, but the thing is, bald people really don't care about it. That's what I find. I'm going to refresh one more time and end the video, but good to see you, Victor. Software's pretty sweet, isn't it? And look at that. There are lots there. Damn New Zealanders. See, Victor's trolling. At least now you're a commenter. You're where the trolls should be. You're always trolling from the video seat. I always find it hilarious how you manage to reverse troll while we're on the videos. See you later, Fami and Kurame. I'm going to sign off in a second now as well. Good to see you, Mikey Koes. Long distance solo cycling. There we go. I don't know what you're talking about, if you're talking about Australia or something, but certainly. If you're worried about crime, Japan has low crime and nice scenery. That is true. And yes, so good talking to you all. I'm going to sign off now. Hope you have a good night. See you next week. 2.5 Oyajis this Wednesday with Victor, who's there. We'll find a good topic for it. Maybe we'll start using the software soon. Who knows? Good to see you all. And peace. Awkward ending. When I turn this off. Stop streaming. What? No. It logged me out. Logged me back in. No, I don't want to sign on that. Other choices. No. Back. Switch account. Bada bing. See, why does it log me out in the middle of a live show? Come on. I do not have permission to view my own I know why. Okay. Switch account. Bada bing. I get the oops page. Well, I'm trying to shut down this broadcast and I get the oops page. What is an oops page? Okay. I'm now on the top pages. Just give me a stop button for the broadcast. Live events. Here's my current live event. I'll go to the live control room where I will stop streaming. 1 hour, 4 minutes, 19 seconds, and I'm done.